The Golden State Warriors once again found themselves facing a complicated scenario in the current NBA season. The 124-119 overtime loss to the Los Angeles Clippers last Sunday not only impacted the team's morale, but also had direct consequences on the Western Conference standings. With that result, the team dropped to the 7th position, automatically placing them in the dreaded play-in tournament, where they will face the Memphis Grizzlies in a do-or-die matchup on Tuesday night. This sequence of decisions and results has put even more focus on head coach Steve Kerr and his choices, especially regarding the team's rotation. And among all the absences felt in this clash against the Clippers, one stood out significantly: Jonathan Kuminga, the promising young forward and first-round pick in the 2021 draft, didn't even leave the bench, despite being available to play. Kuminga's absence in such an important game did not go unnoticed, even more so considering that he averaged 15.3 points and 4.6 rebounds throughout the season. Solid numbers for a player in his 4th year in the league. This sudden exclusion, without any clear explanation, raises a series of questions about his future within the franchise, especially given that he will soon become a restricted free agent. On social media, Forbes journalist Evan Siddery echoed this perception by pointing out that Kuminga wasn't used in one of the most crucial games of the season, suggesting that the team may be considering moving on without him. The decision to leave him out without a public justification or known injury only fuels speculation about a possible rift between the player and the California-based team. As a result, Kuminga's name is beginning to appear more frequently in discussions about potential off-season trades. One scenario circulating behind the scenes in the league involves a possible deal with the San Antonio Spurs. The proposal? A trade involving Kuminga and Spurs guard Devin Vassell, who is currently in the 2nd year of a 5-year contract worth a total of $135 million. For the Warriors, such a move would make sense not only from a technical standpoint, but also strategically. Vassell is an efficient perimeter player, averaging nearly 37% from three-point range, along with 5.5 attempts per game. In a system like Kerr's, which values offensive fluidity, floor spacing, and constant movement, having a reliable shooter with strong game awareness could be a valuable asset to keep the offense operating at a high level alongside Stephen Curry. Meanwhile, from San Antonio's perspective, acquiring a player with Kuminga's profile could align perfectly with the franchise's current stage. In a rebuilding phase with a talented young core, the Spurs could capitalize on Kuminga's defensive abilities. He holds a solid defensive rating of 112 per 100 possessions, while also betting on his offensive development, which still has room for growth. This potential trade remains speculative for now, but it doesn't seem far-fetched, especially considering the Warriors' unstable moment and the franchise's need to make quick adjustments to remain competitive while Stephen Curry continues to play at a high level. The window to chase another title alongside Curry and other veterans is closing, and each decision could mean the difference between another deep playoff run or an early return home. Furthermore, it's important to note that keeping Kuminga on the roster would also bring significant financial implications. As a restricted free agent, he will be entitled to receive offers from other teams, and the Warriors will have to decide whether to match those offers to keep him or seek alternatives even before that scenario unfolds. This uncertainty, combined with the decision not to use him in a decisive game, suggests that management may be leaning toward a new direction. And if that's the case, Vassell emerges as a target that not only makes sense technically, but also fits the profile of a player who can grow alongside Curry in an already well-established system. It's still too early to confirm anything definitively, but the signs are there. Kuminga's absence may have been the first step toward a significant change brewing behind the scenes of the San Francisco franchise. If the game against the Los Angeles Clippers was a sign of things to come, the Golden State Warriors are about to face a crossroads. The non-utilization of Jonathan Kuminga not only raises doubts about his place within the roster, but also reveals a silent tension regarding the direction the franchise intends to take. In a season where every detail matters, every absence carries weight, and every decision can determine the future of a team that still believes it can win another championship. Of course, decisions like this don't happen in a vacuum. Steve Kerr, a coach with multiple titles and vast experience, surely had his reasons for making such a move. However, what draws attention is the context. We're talking about a decisive matchup that could have sealed a direct path to the playoffs. And yet, Kuminga remained on the bench. Not due to injury, not due to public punishment. He just sat there watching. That alone sends a clear message. His presence on the court was not considered essential at that moment. This type of decision tends to have repercussions. In the locker room, it can create discomfort, especially for a young player who had been showing improvement and potential. For the front office, it might signal the need to act quickly to avoid losing valuable assets without getting proper returns. And for the market as a whole, it's a sign that Jonathan Kuminga might be available. And that kind of player, young, athletic, and with developing skills, rarely goes unnoticed by other franchises. In this context, the possibility of a trade with the San Antonio Spurs starts to seem less hypothetical and more plausible, not only due to a need on the Warriors' side, but because both parties would stand to benefit. The Spurs have a consistent track record of developing raw talent and turning it into complete players. Kuminga would fit perfectly into that model. He is athletic, versatile, capable of defending multiple positions and, with patience, could evolve into an elite offensive weapon. In San Antonio, he would find the ideal environment to keep growing, without the immediate pressure to deliver results every night. On the other hand, Devin Vassell would be an immediate boost for Golden State. A player who already has some experience but is still young enough to grow within the franchise's system. His perimeter shooting ability, combined with his off-ball movement, makes him a valuable complementary piece alongside Stephen Curry. In a team that needs to optimize every possession, every inch of the court, Vassell could be the missing link to provide more consistency to the team's offensive system. Additionally, his presence would help balance the defensive effort, something the Warriors have struggled to maintain consistently throughout the season. The team's rotation often lacks players who can switch between offensive creation and defensive responsibilities, and Vassell, with his physique and basketball IQ, can contribute on both ends of the floor. Another factor to consider in this equation is the contract situation. Vassell is already under contract through 2029, which gives Golden State important security in terms of long-term planning. With a roster that mixes proven veterans and promising young players, it's essential to have pieces that ensure stability, especially in a market like California, where salary cap space is always a challenge. The acquisition of Vassell in this sense would be strategic, a player ready to contribute now but who still has room to grow, all under a set contract. However, like every major move, there are risks. Giving up on Kuminga also means giving up on an asset that could explode in value in the coming years. If he reaches his potential outside the franchise, there will be inevitable questions about the decision to let him go. But keeping a player who no longer seems to be part of the coaching staff's plans can also be harmful, both for internal dynamics and for the athlete's own development. The dilemma, therefore, is clear. Bet on the continuation of a project that seems to have cooled off or seek a new direction with someone who could bring more immediate results. This uncertainty is not new for the Warriors. The franchise has experienced a victorious cycle like few in NBA history, but now it needs to balance maintaining excellence with the necessary renewal. Time, always unforgiving, demands its dues. And at this moment, with Curry still playing at a high level, every season is an opportunity that cannot be wasted. The loss to the Clippers, although painful, might be the turning point needed to rethink the team's structure. The play-in game against the Grizzlies will be more than just a decisive match. It will be a gauge of how competitive this version of the Warriors truly is. And depending on the outcome, the front office may not wait long to take action. A possible early elimination could accelerate negotiations, move pieces, and seal the fate of players who, not long ago, seemed to have a guaranteed spot in the rotation. Kuminga, in this case, is the main name on that list. His youth and talent make him a valuable asset, but his current fit within the team, or lack thereof, could be decisive for his future. If the deal with the Spurs gains traction, It could mark a turning point in the Warriors' attempt to reinvent themselves without giving up elite performance. Pairing Curry and Vassell, two players with different styles but potentially complementary, might be the missing step to keep the team in the real hunt for another trophy. But until then, everything depends on how the season unfolds. Every play-in game will be like an early final. And in the meantime, Kuminga watches in silence as his fate is shaped behind the scenes. As the Warriors prepare for the play-in matchup against the Memphis Grizzlies, a cloud of uncertainty looms over the roster and, most notably, behind the scenes of the franchise. The game against the Clippers wasn't just a bitter loss, it was a clear portrait of the weaknesses that have lingered throughout the season, and perhaps the definitive signal that structural changes are inevitable. While Steve Kerr tries to find the ideal lineup to advance in the tournament and keep hopes of another playoff run alive, the silence surrounding Jonathan Kuminga remains deafening. No formal explanation has been given. No interview has provided answers. He was listed as active, was in uniform, but didn't step on the court. And in such a decisive game, that absence speaks louder than any official statement. The reality is that the Warriors are going through a delicate transition. The championship-winning core, responsible for multiple titles and for establishing the team as one of the greatest dynasties of the century, is aging. And while Stephen Curry still dazzles with spectacular performances, it's clear that he needs a supporting cast that matches his brilliance, both in terms of commitment and functionality within Kerr's tactical system. In this context, the idea of bringing in Devin Vassell is gaining even more traction. The search for a partner to complement Curry's game is not new. The system based on off-ball movement, quick passing, and spacing requires smart and versatile players. Vassell, with his efficient shooting ability and fluid movement within opposing defenses, fits that mold perfectly. More than that, he's a solid perimeter defender, capable of guarding multiple positions and with a sharp understanding of the game, traits the Warriors highly value in their system. His presence could ease the burden on Curry, giving the veteran point guard more freedom to create without having to worry about carrying the team offensively on every single possession. But like any trade, there is an emotional cost. Kuminga is more than just a promising player. He represents a recent investment, one of time, patience, and development. Being a high draft pick placed a weight on his shoulders that goes beyond statistics. When the franchise selected him, they envisioned a future star, perhaps even a potential successor in leading the team. That's why moving on from Kuminga wouldn't be just a personnel change. It would be the acknowledgement that the original plan may not have materialized as expected. It would mean admitting that, despite his raw talent, he hasn't quite fit into the team's structure in the ideal way, especially during critical moments. It's hard to ignore how such a decision could affect the locker room. Younger players, seeing a teammate sidelined despite strong performances throughout the season, might begin to question their own place. Meanwhile, veterans see with urgency the need for immediate adjustments to prevent each season from becoming an early farewell. The arrival of Vassell, therefore, would not just be a technical addition. It would be a clear statement of intent. The Warriors still believe they can compete at the top, but they are willing to reshape the path to get there. It's no longer just about waiting for potential to mature. Now, the priority is to give Curry the support he needs to continue competing at the highest level, while there's still time. On the Spurs side, the scenario is also intriguing. San Antonio is building a new cycle, betting on talent development and creating space to experiment with new combinations. Kuminga, with his athletic explosiveness, defensive potential, and being just 22 years old, could become a central piece in that rebuilding process. Under the guidance of a coach like Greg Popovich, renowned for his ability to mold players with varying physical and technical profiles, Kuminga would have the chance to evolve without the pressure to deliver immediately. And with a young roster around him, he would have the time to make mistakes, learn, and grow, something that the highly competitive environment of Golden State may no longer be allowing. Furthermore, the trade would give the Spurs room to adjust their payroll in the long term, considering that Vassell is already financially committed for 5 years. By acquiring a player who will still have his new contract negotiated as a restricted free agent, San Antonio would gain flexibility, able to decide whether to invest in Kuminga long-term or use him as a future trade asset. All of this makes it clear that Kuminga's fate is closer to being redefined than anyone imagined at the beginning of the season. And if the play-in marks the end of the road for the Warriors in 2025, it's highly likely that the team's backstage will become a true laboratory of possibilities during the offseason. In a way, the outcome of all this already seems to have begun. Not playing Kuminga in a key game was the first chapter in a storyline that is likely to intensify in the coming weeks. The Golden State front office, led by Mike Dunleavy, will have tough decisions to make. Preserving the team's competitive identity without clinging too tightly to the past will be the real challenge. And while the fans focus on the upcoming clash with the Grizzlies, the clock keeps ticking behind the scenes. The next big move may not happen on the court, but at the negotiating table, where the future of the franchise will once again be reshaped. Kai Sotto is one of those names that sparks curiosity and anticipation in the basketball world. At just 22 years old, the young Filipino has already built an impressive career, and now there's the possibility that he will don the Golden State Warriors jersey. But is he really ready to face the biggest challenge of his career? Professional basketball in the United States is not just a test of talent, but a real battleground where only the best manage to establish themselves. For Kai, the adaptation will be essential. The speed of the game, the physical demands, and the defensive intensity of the NBA are completely different from any other league he has played in. Even for athletes with great potential, the transition period can be brutal. However, Kai Sotto has something that grabs attention: a rare combination of height, skill, and offensive versatility. He's not just a towering center who protects the paint. His offensive game also has nuances that could make him a valuable player. What still needs to be tested is how he will handle opponents who are far more experienced, athletic, and prepared than those he's faced so far. If he is indeed signed by the Warriors, the impact of his arrival will go beyond the courts. The Bay Area has a significant Filipino community that is passionate about basketball. Kai's presence could turn the Chase Center into a cauldron of energy, with Filipino fans cheering on every play. This emotional and cultural factor cannot be ignored, as the NBA has been increasingly focused on expanding its global influence. Beyond the cultural aspect, Kai Sotto's presence with the Warriors also represents a business opportunity for the franchise. The NBA has already recognized the value of international players in terms of marketing and fan engagement around the world. Kai has the potential to attract a huge fan base, which could further boost the Warriors' brand in Asian markets. However, there's a big but in this equation. Is he ready for this responsibility? Breaking into the rotation of a team like the Golden State Warriors is not easy. The team, accustomed to contending for titles, needs players who can contribute immediately. This means Kai will have to prove himself quickly, showing that he can compete against the best. The Warriors' track record with talent development could work in his favor. Under the guidance of an experienced coach and established players, Kai could develop his game and fix his weaknesses. But at the same time, every roster spot is fiercely contested. If he doesn't meet expectations quickly, the space for his development could be very limited. So, Dub Nation, did you enjoy the news? Then leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any details about our Golden State Warriors. Drop a comment with your thoughts and share it with other fans. Thanks, and see you next time.